All right, well, welcome back to Wisdom for the Church. Glad you could join us. I'm joined today by a guest, Kyle Hessler, and he's with Page 50 Media and more, and he's got some good things to say about taking dominion and family, and also a conference opportunity coming up. And so glad to have him. Kyle, how you doing, man?
John, it's great to be here. Yeah, thank you, man. I'm doing great.
Yeah, good to hear. For those that might not know who you are, where do you come from? What do you do, and what makes you come on the channel today?
Well, I came on the channel because you had me. But my name is Kyle Hessler. I'm father to Theoden and Stonewall. I'm married to Jenny, and we're members of All Saints Presbyterian Church in Fort Worth. Um, I'm a Christian. I'm a business guy, so I am a sales rep for a couple different companies, including Page 50, as we talked about. I'm also a sales rep for a company called ACP International. I get to travel the country for them. I dabble in some real estate. I also used to be a pro wrestling promoter. I stopped doing that very recently.
What?
Yeah, we can talk about that too. It's one of my business endeavors. One of my business failings, honestly. But I had a lot of fun doing it. And then recently I started the Workspace conference. And so I'm just kind of an entrepreneurial guy and just dude trying to take dominion and his little slice of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a wonderful moment for this recording right here. Not planned in the slightest. Your son just comes on, and like that is just,
I know.
he seems awesome. So the camera
He has a. This is the second time he's intruded on one, which I kind of enjoy because it's like honestly, a lot of what Workspace is supposed to be about is kind of figuring out a way that we as men can reclaim kind of the pre-industrial revolution era of like how do you keep your family and your business kind of together, and we can get into that too. But like he's traveled with me. He's been in more than half the country, several places multiple times. Like for example, we were talking right before we started recording that we go up to Moscow, Idaho pretty regularly. He's been up there like 5 or 6 times. So
Oh, wow. Okay.
he's a world traveler.
I was gonna say, a well-traveled young man at age 3.
Yep, he's been to. We got to go to Oregon this last week, and so he's been to every state west of the Dakotas. So he's been everywhere, and he comes with me on business trips. And part of that's because I want him to. I mean, like I'm not good with my hands, so I'm gonna have to learn. I was joking with some people last night, like I want him to do like Boy Scouts or not Boy Scouts, but like Trail Life or something like that through our church. And I would have to do it too. But the trick is I got to stay one lesson ahead of him because I'm not good with my hands. But the thing is, like, I want him. He doesn't have to be a sales guy if he doesn't want to. Obviously, if I started a company, I'd love for him to take it over and run it. But I just want him to grow up learning how dad's trying to take dominion. And from an early age, like that's been a priority of ours. So he's been doing that since he was, I mean, he's 3 now. He's been doing that since he was like one and some change. Like he was born in April and he started doing it in January of last year. So like when he was like one and I guess he would have been like 20 months old. 20 months old, yeah, 20 months old. He started traveling with me, and so and
he'll see
he's. What did you say?
I said he'll see a lot, and he has seen a lot for his age.
Oh so. Yeah, he's been on a lot of flights. So but that's like a big thing to me is like so I'm not so sure. Like in the if we can get into it, I guess one of the things that I see in the modern like reforms, at least in my circles, is there's kind of a push to do this like what I call homesteading thing, which is like this desire to quit your office job or your your Wall Street job or whatever your job out in the world. Let's quit that. Let's have you return to home, work from home, so you can be at home helping your wife, and you'll make soap or whatever it may be. You'll be a contractor or something. And I don't want to disparage people that are doing a good job of this. And frankly, I don't even want to disparage people who have already done it. I'm trying to encourage people to rethink their decision making, because I get the natural tendency to say, look, the Industrial Revolution has produced some bad things that we
Yeah.
still haven't really worked through. One of which is like men are separated from their boys and their daughters way too much. So we've
Yeah.
got to figure out like what is that supposed to look like, because we should want our family involved in our dominion taking. We should want the family involved with what we're doing. Um, but I don't think the solution to that is quit well-paying jobs that are,
Mm.
like, again, no offense to anybody, but if your desire is to make soap, it's you got to think of this as an entrepreneurial. What service are you actually offering? Are you offering innovation, or are you just selling another kind of soap? Like a lot of people can buy that like kind of homemade organic soap. A lot of people do that.
Yeah.
What are you doing that makes you different? And again, I'm not trying to box anyone in. I mean, there's be a contractor, be this, be that, but do a good job if you're going to do it. There's too many. I think there's a desire in kind of the reform circle right now to encourage
Mm.
people to say, quit your job at Audible. That's a woke corporation.
I
Go
see.
work at home. I go work at home. And then what they miss is like that job at Audible might be paying like $200,000. Like you actually could be providing for your children's children there. And
Yeah.
we think that we go like, oh, you're working for a woke corporation. It's like the dude might be taking dominion in his little sphere, and we kind of, I think we have a bad habit of kind of diminishing that. So that's a lot of what I want workspace to be about. I
Mm.
also want to be talking about the theology of work. I want to be kind of recovering the dignity of work. And so that's a lot of what we want to talk about. But a large part of it is I'm a family guy, and I love that my son and me get to spend extra time together traveling the country. And I would love to encourage other guys to figure out what that looks like for them, because our situation is kind of unique, but there's surely a way that you can keep your family and keep your job and not have these be like separate spheres. They can be overlapping spheres. If that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. So I think that's a great the way that you say that is helpful. And it sounds like you're trying to help people, and even as you grow in it, you're trying to sift through basically how do we work, how do we apply our hands and do good work for God's glory in a way that comports with Scripture, and do that in our modern day where obviously challenges have come up for various reasons, such as the climates of paganism that we live in, such as the technological age we live in. And you're saying, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you're saying there's a biblical answer to that, but the application can be multifaceted. Like you
Yeah,
don't have to
absolutely.
just say, I quit this place and therefore I'm just going to work from home, though that could be one way to apply it.
Yeah. In one of the promo videos we have, my pastor Steve Jeffrey, he's talking about. I'm blanking the guy's name, but there was a guy that was burned at the stake, and one of the reasons he was burned at the stake was he was highlighting that in God, this was 1689. I want to say, I'm just totally blanking on who it was, but he was in a Christian society and he was burned in part. One of the reasons was because he was highlighting the dignity of work,
Hmm.
because for a large part of Christendom we've done this thing where it's like the only meaningful work is church or
Hmm.
clergy or something, or mission fields. Well, now we've done this whole thing, we've added to that. So like the only really meaningful work is 401c3s or this or
I see.
clergy, or that sort of thing. And
Yeah.
that's just not, there's nothing biblical about it.
Yeah.
There's nothing honest about that either. And I think that a lot of Christians need to see value in their work. And so
Hmm.
I always reference like one of the first things I talk about is like, you want to talk about these conversations. There's a great little book, because I'm not a big reader. So one of the books that, this is an easy one for people to read, is look up a book called Brother Lawrence. And Brother Lawrence was a monk that lived in a monastery, and he talks about the glories, the joy he found in glorifying God in sweeping the monastery.
Wow.
Now he's a monk, so on like one hand you could do the whole, well, he's a clergy, but his whole thing is the dignity and the simplicity.
Yeah.
He's not talking about writing or translating a Bible. He's
Yeah.
talking about like, I just want to keep this place clean. There's a dignity in that.
Yeah.
So one of the things I'm encouraging people to do, partially because he's one of our keynote speakers, but also just because it's a good book, is David Bahnsen wrote a book recently called Full Time. And a
Okay.
lot of that book is like when I read it, I was like, that's it. And I had already booked him as a speaker before I read the book. And then I
Yeah.
read the book. And I'm like, talk about this. And he was already planning on it. But like a lot of what he talks about that in that book is like the meaning of life is work. Um,
Hmm.
when we look at Genesis, what is God doing? He's working, and then he's creating nothing into something, and then he's telling Adam and Eve to take dominion of that something by
Yeah.
creating. So we don't have the godly attributes of creating, although certain atheistic scientists would think that they do. We don't have the ability to create something out of nothing. We don't have that. We have to work with matter. Only God can do that kind of miraculous thing. But he's called us to emulate him by tilling the ground and producing, uh, by working and producing labors that glorify him. And yes, the production of what you make matters too. So like we do, there's a conversation that should be said about like, you know, how hard you work versus how much you produce. So like there's guys that are contractors that work way harder than me, but maybe make a bit less because I'm in sales. Well, that doesn't mean my work is more meaningful
Yeah.
by any means, but it is to say we need to get back to the understanding that God commands man to work, and women are called to support that work. And so um, we need to recover that and not make it into this truncated view of like, oh, you're in manufacturing or you're in sales or you work on a used car lot or
Yeah.
you're a caddy. The real dignity is found in this kind of work. That's just unbiblical. And I think right now, like I was kind of harping on people that are like doing this homesteading thing. I think that's part of the tension too. There's a lot of people that think that there's like extra dignity found in doing specific kinds of work. And
Yeah.
I just don't think that's true.
Yeah. I definitely see where you're coming from there. Almost as an overcorrection. And it's a really awesome correction. Like that people are thinking more, wow, we have spent so much of our intellectual, emotional, mental, etc. energies throughout the history of our lives, like trying to be the best at a sport that we burn out at.
Yeah.
Or trying to
Yeah.
do this thing over here for a company that might hate us. So I understand the correction being back to like, let's get back to something basic and tangible and in the home. But I do think to your point, I've seen it from all angles. I feel like where like someone who's almost blue collar is like, oh, those dumb white collar people, they don't know how to. But there's also the other side, oh, those blue collar idiots. It's like the Lord does not call us to view work that way. He calls us to see the dignity, to quote, as much as I am not a huge fan, like the title of Tim Keller's book, Every Good Endeavor.
Yep.
Uh, you know what I mean? Like there's dignity in all sorts of types of works that are not obviously immoral. And it sounds like you kind of get that, and the conference that you're going to be helping lead will be a part of that too. Because I definitely see that a lot right now, where it's almost like this overcorrection of if you do anything white collar, now you're the idiot. It's like, how about we just not call each other idiots?
Yeah. Well, but even beyond that, let's see the dignity in the end.
Yes.
And I'm post mill. What's your eschatology? Are you pre
I
mill or
am Amil. Hmm.
okay?
Yeah.
So I'm
And
post.
I'm not a
I'm like
Presbyterian.
yeah. So I'm staunchly post mill. Like
Yeah.
I was recently contemplating like what is the last Christian going to think when he's the last one that dies and then immediately is brought back. Anyway, that's a little joke, but
Yeah.
I'm post mill, so a lot of what I think about is, production and blessings that we have.
Hmm.
And I had this thought. I know I've talked to a lot of Christians that had something similar to this when 2020 happened. But I was at so 2020 happens, lockdowns are going on or whatever, and I go to the grocery
Yeah.
store and I was looking for some kind of fruit, and I think it might have been like something somewhat exotic, but like not outlandish. It was like either something like a dragon fruit or a
Yeah.
mango. There was something
Hmm.
tropical, but it was like again, you can find it at most American superstores, like in a big city, right? And I just couldn't find it; they were completely out. And I had this moment where it occurred to me, it's like, wow, I have access to things that King Solomon would have never tasted, right? I
Yeah.
have I have resources and what do you call it? Like treats, I guess. The beer, whiskey, fruit, food,
Yeah.
fried bacon, things like that.
Fried
That
Oreos, man.
right, exactly. My actually right now downstairs, I think my son has chorizo Oreos. Like,
Oh, there we go.
okay, you know what I mean? But here's my point, and I think like one of the way of thinking about this is, well, so first off, I developed a sense of gratitude for things that I have access to that kings used to not be able to get. But then I
Yeah.
also started thinking about, and this comes from Doug Wilson's productivity book, which is excellent. Um, our phones have like more servants than King Solomon did. Like, I
Yeah.
can get more done with my phone than most men could have done like 200 years ago.
Yeah.
And that comes from, now, how many Christians were involved with the development of the phone? I don't know. But the thing is, there's a post mill, there's a sense of purpose and progress, like good godly progress, that
Mm.
have come from technological advancements. And just, I mean, who amongst us doesn't have an AC system and isn't sitting
Yeah.
around being like, praise God for that AC system? That
Yep.
that comes from hard work. And going back to the dignity of it, and there's a dignity in just doing good work. There is. There's also a dignity in producing things that advance human society. And so the guy that's developing Chat GPT right now, I doubt he's a believer, but
Yeah.
that guy's doing a world of good, in my opinion, because he's allowing a lot more people to be so much more productive
Yep.
with various tasks and stuff. Right now, I'm using Chat GPT to help me invent this crazy fantasy football league where it's full 50-man, or it's a full 53-man roster. It's helping me have points for offensive linemen, punters, returner. Like, it's insane. And like, that's just me. That's just like something I'm doing on my goofball time. But
Yeah.
it's like, that's a crazy technological advancement that is only
Yep.
possible because of the dignity found in work. Now, again, there's a lot of atheists and unbelievers or pagans that are involved with a lot of the technology we have today. But that doesn't mean we can't plunder Egypt and reap the benefits of it. So I'm happy
Yep.
to use technology that's been invented by pagans and just use it for the glory of God. And that all comes back to, like, there's a godliness in the productivity. Like, Jeff Bezos, as godless as he is, has done a lot of good for the world by having a company like Amazon. There's been many people blessed by the fact that Amazon exists.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't just dismiss that. And that's, I
Yeah.
would say,
Yeah.
like,
Sure.
that's the imago Dei found in him, right? Like, he's producing, he's working hard. There's the character of God is reflected in that, even though he's not worshiping God, as far as I know. But
Yeah.
that's just human dignity coming out of him.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you 100% on for sure. Like, absolutely. He is like a Bezos, for example. You use him, you see him bear the image of God and him using the mental faculties to produce something that is productive and beautiful that only like mankind could produce. And that's
Yes.
because we're created in the image of God. We create, we make things beautiful, we put things in orderly fashion, for people's benefit. And like all things, even like an Amazon or Chat GPT, you'll still see the effects of sin in them.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean there's not benefit, from them. Like plenty of people, myself, there's probably plenty of things that I don't like about an Amazon, for example. But at the same
Right.
time, what a crazy thing to think, like in the snap of almost a finger I can have books or whatever, but books, let's just say, delivered to me that are some of the wisest things ever written. um
Yep.
and I can just have it within a couple of days and not have to go search out the entire world for it. That's incredible. um for sure. So I 100% agree with you on that. It sounds like you've done a lot of thinking about this kind of thing. It's actually funny you mentioned, eschatology. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know much about. I really do not know the average person's even theological background of who views my YouTube channel. So
Okay.
it could be a decent number of reformed people, but it could be some reformed, some not. The cool thing I think about, a conference like that you're putting on and these sorts of ideas is explicitly the dignity of work and the image of God and taking dominion is not Reformed. I mean, it's not
No,
only
yeah, yeah.
Reformed. You know what I mean? And so I think,
Well,
you know,
wait. Can I push back slightly?
yeah,
I think I agree with you, but let me give a little credence and a little three cheers for the true reformers.
yeah,
Um, Actually, this was a big thing in the Reformation. Was the Catholic Church who
yeah,
was we had moved into an era where the reformers were the ones pushing back about clergy work is the only godly kind of work. That was a Reformation sort of thing, and that went from not so much Luther, but it came in with Calvin, obviously, a long degree, and then certainly on the tail end of like what we I think we would call the Reformation, like Abraham Kuyper. Like that was a big thing for Abraham Kuyper, who was a minister, prime minister, like an author. Like this dude did it all,
yeah,
and one of the things he talked about was dignity of work. So it, I think I don't want to get too much into this, but I would just say like when we talk about reformed, you could be like me and be a jerk Presbyterian and say, well, you're only reformed if you're a Presbyterian.
yeah,
That's ridiculous. Let's not be that. But we should define our terms, and I think reform generally means you got to have some Calvinistic bona fides and
hmm,
some doctrinal. There's some certain doctrinal things that have to line up with what the Reformation was, but in a large way, Reformed should just mean, in some simple ways, Protestant.
yeah,
And so with that being said, one of the things we need to recover as Protestants, and let's encourage any Catholic brothers that may be listening, Catholics too, but the Reformed amongst us, what you may call Reformed, we need to recover that dignity of work, because that's
hmm,
been a thing that's been lost probably in the last like 150 years or so.
100%. Yeah.
So
And I suppose my point on that, I appreciate that because yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The Reformation, it recovered a lot of that. Is I
yes,
suppose that inherently it's biblical, and you could be
yeah,
you could be a Methodist up the street who is a Protestant, but you could be a Methodist up the street or a Lutheran down the road or whatever, and you know, prayerfully, what is being spoken of, even if you disagree on some particulars, it's like, well, you can't disagree with this stuff actually, because this is what God has revealed in Scripture, and so this should be helpful to you. Basically, is my whole point.
right.
Even if you're not someone who is explicitly a Reformed Christian, if you go to a non-denom church or whatever, but I 100% agree with you about your point about this was a recovery, reality in the Reformation. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
uh,
but to your maybe kind of what you're getting at is like I do want what we're doing this conference to be kind of like ecclesiastical. Like I'd love for a bunch of Catholics to come. I'd love for a bunch of Lutherans to come. I'd love for whoever to come. Um, Frankly, I'd even love like if some like progressive Christians came,
mhm,
as long as they were well behaved, because like we are like it is a staunchly reformed press. I mean, I think all of our speakers are Presbyterian, but that wasn't done deliberately. Like that
yeah,
wasn't. You're not going to hear a message about. I, at least I don't think so. You're not going to hear anything about baptizing babies at this conference unless it's just like said as like a lighthearted comment.
yeah,
Most of what we want to talk about is like strictly about work. Now it's going to relate to back to the gospel because we should believe in. I'm a big fan of the Moscow phrase that they come out with, all of Christ for all of life. So
mm,
like, how does Christ apply to how we view our money, investments, job, career, family? How do those things relate? Well, that's what the conference is about. But clearly, like if you start pulling on some threads. Yeah, like you may end up talking eschatology and things like that, and that's fine. Like I'm not opposed to that, but we don't want this to be like if we have any pre-mill dispensationalists that are kind of like scared of this. It's like, brother, just come. Like we're
yeah,
not we can talk about it. Like we'll have a beer and psalms on Friday night. I'll crack back a beer, and after singing a song, I'll talk eschatology all night long. But we're not. That's not what we want the conference to be about per se. I do think it has. I mean, your theology will influence what you do. So it's
yeah,
like me being post mill very much is affecting why I'm doing this conference,
mm,
but it's not the end all be all. And so yeah, whether you're a Methodist, an Arminian, a Mennonite, we have a bunch of actually one of our key sponsors is up in an area of Texas that's all former Mennonites and existing
huh,
Mennonites. And I've been trying to encourage them, like, dude, tell the Mennonite brothers to come join us. Like, I don't think they will, but like
yeah.
try it.
You never know.
You never
Yeah,
know.
yeah. I mean, to your point, part of the reason I'm having this conversation right now, in terms of with any sort of depth, I have to give credit to having being a Reformed Christian,
Yes.
because there are just certain things where I'm just thankful to the Lord for introducing me to Reformed theology. And for those that don't subscribe to certain particulars there, I'm glad you're my brother in Christ if you believe in Christ through faith alone. But there are certain things that I'm so thankful for the more maximalistic um, approach to Scripture, in terms of we're trying to get all that we can from the Scriptures. And I think Reformed theology, like the recovery effort, like you said,
Yeah.
and the Reformation, just as an example, um, that only comes through that background. If I'm being honest about myself, so there's definitely truth there.
I would, this is a little off topic, but let me just quickly give two shout outs to a guy I go to church with, Jim Jordan, James Jordan, otherwise known as. He's like if you like the Moscow mood or you like the CREC, this dude's the old school. Like he was doing a lot of that stuff in like the 60s and 70s, like homeschooling and classical education and all that stuff. Um, he was having debates about theonomy in the 80s. So
Oh
anyway,
wow.
James Jordan has a book called Through New Eyes, and the whole concept is this: most Christians have a Christian worldview. That
Mm,
sounds nice. Christian worldview. Like, how would that be a problem? We need a biblical worldview, is what he said.
mm,
We need to be putting stuff through the lens of the Bible, not our Christian traditions. And if
mm,
sometimes your Christian tradition, as reformed and thoughtful and faithful as it may be, if you're looking through something through a lens that's ultimately man's eyes, that's not good. And I tell this to my Presbyterian friends all the time, like, um, how, like, I'm not going to be surprised if we show up in heaven and God's like, no, you got that post mill thing way wrong. You know what I mean? Like, I, I'm
yeah.
not arrogant enough to think that like I've got it all figured out. Certainly me, but even like my denomination or like my, church chosen form of liturgy. So I would encourage people to read Through New Eyes. Now he's a Presbyterian, so I mean, like that's going to affect it. But the book really should be encouraging people to look at things biblically, not through Christian lenses, which it is a huge difference when you start really thinking about the difference in kind.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. Through No Eyes, and who is the author?
James Jordan.
James
So you
Jordan.
can get out. Yep, you can get off. You can get off Amazon. It's a pretty thick book. Um, I started reading it and left it on a plane and it got stolen. So
You bless
somebody
someone.
stole. Yeah, I know. I told him. I told him at church like the next Sunday. I was just like, "Hey, somebody stole your copy of your book off a plane," and he kind of
See,
funny.
if the person takes heed to the book's message, you'll get that book back. That's what's going to happen.
They can keep it, man. It's all good.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
but yeah,
yeah. I don't want to take too much of your time, because we did, talk beforehand that you're a busy guy.
yeah,
Obviously, people that would be interested in your conference like to know some basic details, where it is, when
yes.
it's happening. You might have been transitioning to that, but what can they expect?
Very good. Yeah, so the conference is June 28th and 29th. We do have a speakers dinner if you're interested. It's limited seating, but that's going to be on the 27th. It's all in downtown Fort Worth at the Hilton there, right in downtown. The speakers dinner will be at the Ruth Chris that's right there. But yeah, for our speakers, I mentioned earlier, our keynote guy is David Bonson. If you know who Greg Bonson is, Greg Bonson was. One sec. Hey, bud. Are you having a hard time? You want to sit with me while we finish? Okay, come here. Yeah. Um. So David Bonson is the son of Greg Bonson, who was like a really famous theologian. He was a big guy in theonomy back in the 80s. He passed away. I don't remember when he passed away, but it was a while ago. But David is his son. David runs the Bonson Group, which is a financial investment group that manages about $5 billion in assets. So when I say that, it's to say that David Bonson knows quite a bit about investing and and he's very theologically sound.
Yeah.
So that you're getting probably like I don't know anyone that's ever lived that's probably managed as much wealth as this guy has and has as
No.
much theological training as this guy has. So he's kind of our keynote guy. He'll be talking Friday night, and of course, he'll be at the speakers dinner I mentioned.
Yeah.
We also have my pastor, Steve Jeffrey. Steve is a former, I like saying this because it embarrasses him, but he's a one-time rocket scientist. So
Ooh.
this guy's really smart. I believe he went to Oxford. So he's from London. He came to America 4 years ago. But he's done some rental investments and stuff like that. But this guy is probably the most theologically sound guy we have on our team as far as speakers go, but he's also probably the least business gifted, and that's okay. Like he's going to lay down the groundwork of a theology of work. He
Yeah.
said, I I'm holding him to this. He told me he's going to go through the Bible in one session, the whole Bible.
All
And I was like,
right.
okay, great. So he's going to
17-hour
kind of
session.
yeah, he's basically he's going to land the groundwork for what the conference is going to be about.
Yeah.
Um, and then we have C.R. Wiley, who is one of
Okay.
my favorite authors. He wrote a book called War for the Household and or the Household and the War for the Cosmos. I always say it wrong,
Okay.
but it's a great book that talks about a lot of what we were talking about earlier on about like the Industrial Revolution and how it's impacted how homes are viewed. Like things like we have rooms, but we don't have units. So like people in families disperse to like the kids go to their room and play their games, and the husband goes to his room and plays pool or something like that. And
Yeah.
he gets it, and I think he's a great speaker. As far as qualifications for speaking at our conference, he's an author and a pastor, so he gets all the stuff I want him to talk about. But he's also um, he's a landlord, so he owns about 82 doors, which means he has a lot of skill when it comes to business and development. So he's basically built and flipped his own houses for decades now, and
Yeah.
so he's got a good sense of business. We also have David Reese speaking, who's he's the owner of Armored Republic down in Arizona. He also owns several other business, including an extruder here out in Texas. So this guy's doing multiple different businesses, but he is also himself a pastor. He's a Presbyterian guy, family guy. So he knows business and investing, and he wants to talk about dominion through investing, which I think is a really interesting topic. And then finally, we have Andrew Krapashitz, who is the CEO of Red Balloon. He's an elder at Christ Church in Moscow, Idaho. But this guy has been the CEO of several multi-million dollar companies, so he knows
Oh wow.
exactly what he's talking about. Yeah. So we've got five guys. Outside of Steve Jeffrey, we've got four guys that are like, you know, I don't want to tell you how much they're probably worth, but you can do the math. That
Yeah.
and I only say that to say like these are serious guys. They're not just talkers. They know what they're talking about because they've done it. And so that was kind of exciting to have all these guys on board with it. And then the last person I'll mention is Darren Doan, who is he's made music videos for bands like Shinedown and Kid Rock, but more
Okay.
recently he made a documentary with Christopher Hitchens and Doug Wilson about a decade ago called Collision. But Darren is going to be our host because Darren understands branding and marketing, and so I want him to be kind of hosting the overall conference and kind of shedding some light on that stuff. He's going to ask good questions because he himself is also involved with a lot of good businesses and stuff. So there's a lot of opportunity for that. So that's all of our speakers. The basic format of the week is we're going to have the speakers dinner Thursday night. Friday morning, we're going to have some like classroom settings that we're calling talk shop. Those will be with some local business guys, and David Reese will be talking. And those are going to be like meant for your business owners. They're intended to be more like kind of they'll talk for a few minutes and then you get to ask questions. And then Friday night we'll have a couple lectures, a panel discussion, beer and psalms. Saturday morning we're going to have a networking event. This is designed to be like a job. If you're looking for a job, come up here. Somebody might be hiring. I know several of our vendors and partners are looking for good employees. So come up there with a resume, get yourself out there. But also, if you own a business and you want to find some people to do business with, that's a great opportunity. And then the rest of that afternoon is going to be the rest of our talks and lectures, and we'll close the panel on Saturday night. And it's going to be great. And my hope is that it's kind of a transformative event that people come here ready to learn and be educated and change their opinion on work and dignity of work. but also I really want guys to be, I want it to be practically functional. And by that, I mean, I want guys that may want a new job to find a new job. I want guys that own businesses to find people to do business with. Um, so I want it to be a weekend full of opportunities as much as a weekend of learning.
Yeah, yes, that twofold, really. Yeah, you're learning a lot, but it's also a practical opportunity to meet new people as well. And who knows
Yeah.
what the Lord will do, when you do something like that. So, well, that's great, man. That sounds like a very interesting conference, very informative, and also kind of fun too.
Yeah.
So, I guess in the pinned comment in the description, I can put a link to. Is there just a website for sign up or?
Yep, I was going to give that. If the tickets are available at worksbased.com, so that's works, and then base with a B.com. I'm still shocked we got that URL, but we got that URL. Nobody had it. So that's where you can get tickets and additional info. The website's going to change here in a couple weeks, but you can still use it. It's perfectly fine right now. And then, of course, if you want to follow us on any social media, we're on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. That's a great way to see kind of the stuff we're doing. We have a YouTube page as well. We're going to be uploading some interviews with different business owners over the next few weeks. So a lot going on. But really, if you're in the Texas area or you want a good conference that you're like, I think I could travel for this. I think if you're looking for business and opportunities to grow as an entrepreneur, this is a really good one. And even if you're just like a guy that's, kind of blue collar, and you're just like, man, I'm a line worker and I don't really see myself changing that, but I would like to learn how my work honors and glorifies the Lord. Come on down, brother. This is a great conference for you. And it's meant to be a family friendly conference. So we got pricing for married couples and we got pricing for families.
Okay. Well, that sounds awesome, man. Last question for you, because if someone's stuck around from the beginning, they need to know, did you have any big name wrestlers that you got to come into contact with?
Yeah, tons actually. I think, let's see, biggest was Jake the Snake Roberts.
Oh, recognize that name.
Yep. It was funny. I was with him at breakfast on the first ever show I did. And the lady was like, this is during COVID. So he kind of I think he had the mask on, but he's a tall cat. So, we're like waiting and the lady goes, are you a wrestler? And he goes, yes, ma'am. I'm Jake the Snake. And she's like, really? And he like shows his, WWE Hall of Fame ring. She's like, wow, that's so cool. So, I think I still have his phone number somewhere. I haven't had to call him since then, but yeah, I've worked with somebody. You're referencing something we were talking about earlier, but or I guess we did talk about it. But I promoted pro wrestling for a little bit, and it was a huge blessing. It actually opened a lot of opportunities, even though we didn't make money doing it. It showed a lot of people, like Darren Doan. Darren Doan and me became friends because I showed him that I was doing this, and he was kind of impressed by it. But yeah, we just ended a few months ago, and if you want to see me take a choke slam through a table, it's on my Twitter profile. There's a great video of me I get picked up 7 feet in the air and thrown down through a table. It was pretty epic.
How many people can say that? Wow, choke slam through a table.
Yeah,
that is awesome.
One of the things that really, like I always like when you get specific kind of compliments, because I feel like it's an honor, and really I want to return that honor back to the Lord. But I had several guys tell me, you take that better than guys that are in the WWE. And I was like, wow, that means a lot. So wow. I took it like I died. Because I did. It really
hurt. He's a man who can take a choke slam, they say about you.
Yeah, man.
Well, I really appreciate your time, Kyle. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for the time. And it's I'm praising the Lord for being able to talk to you, because you are taking a step of faith for putting on a new conference, and in some measure, you're kind of practicing what the whole conference is about to some degree, putting it on. So be praying for you, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, brother. No, thank you. I appreciate you, John. Let me come on here, and it was a fun conversation. I appreciate it. Let me talk about it, but thank you for giving me the opportunity to promote the conference. It means a lot.
Absolutely. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it.